100% stable.
And then we're
damn it.
gonna stream. Okay, so we just hit stream. Any minute or so, or 2 or 3, we should come up
And
on the screen. You guys let us know.
I will let you guys go first. I'll be last. And while
Okay.
you guys are doing your thing, I'll see if I can watch the chat.
Okay, cool. So we are live now. So good evening, everyone. There's no one here quite yet, but they're going to be coming in a couple of seconds for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Within
Oh yeah.
20 seconds, we'll have 20 or 30 people here. These guys are always really cool and always very attentive.
Astute and on time.
Always, very much so. So let me shrink down the chat room a little bit. Let's see, we'll see how many people show up here in a couple of seconds. Test out the chat. Let's make sure that's working okay.
Okay, now this
Say
is this being
something.
broadcast on your which of your YouTube? You've got your
It's a
Vision.
home recording made easy. We got one person watching. Is that me? Am I the one?
It's
Am I
you.
the one person?
like
Yeah, this
one
is
of
on the Home Recording Made Easy YouTube channel, Johnny. That's where it is.
Okay. All right,
Yep.
let me see if I can actually find it.
And we're a couple of minutes early, so people are probably just going to start rolling in here in a couple of
No
minutes.
problem. Ooh, look at that. They're the three amigos. That looks
Yeah.
pretty cool. On
Does
the,
it does it look okay?
Yeah, it looks really good.
Excellent. Hi, Eric. How are you? Raymar's here. Rick is here. Missy is here. Steven is here. Here they come. 9, 10. There we go. So now we're rolling. Okay, Tony's here.
14 you got so
Yeah,
far.
see, I told you, just like that. They just start, we're actually a little early. So, welcome everybody to the very first, and who knows if it'll be a second, but it's certainly the very first new broadcast that myself and Johnny Scotland and Johnny Guy cooked up, the new show called That Plugin Show. And so, what we thought we would do once a month is we're going to get together like this for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at most, and each one of us are going to choose a different plugin that we like, that we tend to use, that maybe something new we picked up that we really dig and want to kind of not only show you in maybe in demonstration mode, explain it, and then talk about why we use it, what uses, that may be a little off the beaten path that you may not be aware of. And it'll just be good information for all of you. So we apologize up front if things are a little, janky at times, because we never did 3 people here at the same time trying to share 3 different screens with 3 different audio from Studio One. So yeah, so we're gonna see what happens. But yeah, so I'm really happy to be working here with Johnny Lipsham over in Scotland and Johnny Geib over in Chicago. Say hi to the fine people, Johnny and Johnny.
How is everyone doing?
guys. How we doing, folks?
So we got 17 people that are coming in, and the chat is starting to roll. So this is great. So anyway, as you know, we're going to also be doing next weekend, just keep on your calendar, next Saturday, we're doing another session of interactive mixing where we're actually going to be mixing one of Johnny Geib's songs that he sent over that I think some of you guys have got the multi-tracks for. So we're going to be doing that. That'll be next Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
There are some awesome mixes of that over in the HST Studio One support group in that thread.
Really?
They are just, some of them are different. They got one that's got a huge stereo split. Bobby Booth, I think, has one of my favorites right now with this really good power rock style mix, which I really loved. It's super loud. It sounds really good.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. Let us know in the chat, guys, how the audio is sounding. It looks like it's okay on my end, but I can't always tell. It sounds good in my cans, and so let us know over YouTube. So Johnny Scotland, do you want to jump in first? Do you want to talk about what plugin you chose and why, and kind of show us what you're doing in Studio One? And when you go full screen, with the good grace of the Lord, I'll be able to get us to go full screen so everyone can see it. But I make no promises.
With this technology, I'll bet God's scratching his head.
Yeah, it's really insane what you can do today. I guess it's good that you can do all this stuff, but it's bad because you can do so much stuff that we can't sort out what needs to be done and when and how and why and all that other stuff. So
Tony Graham is saying, Johnny, turn up your microphone. I don't know if he means me or the other Johnny.
Johnny Geib, Mike.
Johnny Geib, Gibe. Now that's a cool take on my name. I've never seen it
Johnny Gibb.
Phonetically. That's perfect.
So Tony says it sounds and looks great. That's awesome. Awesome. We got 17 people watching. That's fantastic. So yeah, let's jump in. Unless you guys want to anything you guys want to announce, Johnny and Johnny, anything you guys want to say or mention before we get rolling?
We got 24 in here actually right
20,
now.
oh yeah, mine's up. There must be a delay. Cool, 24.
Yeah, you're going to be a little bit behind because you're watching the actual the dashboard.
Ah, that's right. That's right. Okay, cool. 24. That's even better. I feel good about that.
Good.
And I have to say also that Scots are currently taking over the live chat right now. There's folks from Go, Cambuslang, and it's 31 degrees centigrade in Glasgow, just 50 miles across the way from Edinburgh. It's 28 degrees here.
Wow.
So,
It's 86 here in Chicago. Yeah, Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's
All right.
75 today here in the East Coast, which is nice.
Yeah, that's comfortable.
No, not bad at all. It's nice. And where am I? I'm downstairs in the studio with no windows.
See, me too. That's where I'm at.
All right, Johnny, why don't you hit us with the full screen in Studio One, and let's see if we can get this lined up for the good people
All right.
over in the YouTube lands. This is going to be
even
fun.
the bad, we'll even cater to the bad people.
We'll cater to all the bad people, the good people, everybody. Everybody's welcome here. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Us being the ugly.
I think we got the ugly down here.
All right, so Johnny's got a screen there, and then when Johnny goes full screen, if I remember right, Johnny, I should be able to click over here. You're going to go full screen, and then I should be able to just increase. Hold on a second. Let me just full screen you here.
Okay.
I'm actually watching the
Oh,
broadcast.
yeah. Now, me and Johnny Geib are in the bottom right-hand corner, and we should see, and everybody should see, a full screen of Studio One with some funky little compressor that I got to get. I like the way that looks. I might have to buy that before.
Yeah. This looks perfect, Dave. It looks perfect on the broadcast.
All right,
That's
good.
great.
Excellent. Okay, go ahead, Johnny. We'll shut up now and take it away, my friend.
All right. So what you see before you is the Klanghelm Mu compressor, made by a guy called Tony in Germany. He's a one-man operation.
Wow.
And he basically makes plugins for himself as he likes to use them. But he sells them for a ridiculously low price. For example, this little guy here will cost you 24 euros, which is unbelievably cheap in pounds and dollars. So
like $15 US.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So what is this compressor like model after? Do you have any idea what hardware it was modeled after?
No idea. However, you get 3 different compressors in one, basically. So you have this one. This is the Mark 1, which kind of, I suppose, to a degree, looks a little bit like an LA2A.
Yes.
Except you've got this timing selector here, which is your attack time. I believe it's a fixed release, but this is like your variable attack time. And then you've got this little panel at the bottom, which appears on all 3 models, and you can hide it away like that, nice and neatly. And basically, you've got this nice little drive knob here, so you can really drive it. You can change the timbre, the color of it, so you can have it like a hi-fi, crystal clean kind of sound, or you can make it nice and dark. And you've got a sidechain filter and the mix knob. And I have to say, this is really good for parallel compression because you can be really brutal with it and then just bury it nice beneath your dry sound, and it just does a great job. So this is the Mark 1. Mark 2 looks, well, we're starting to get into, I think this is a 1950s style compressor, I think, is what Tony told me anyway. And then this one, the Mark 2, is more sort of late 60s, early 70s style compressor. And this one has 3 different ratios, 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 8-to-1, and then a limiter mode. But then you've got these little buttons here, an I stage and a density button. These are all modeled after some analog units in Germany, I believe. I have no idea what these actually do in terms of the circuitry, but when you use them, they sound really, really good.
That's all that matters, right?
Yeah, who cares what it's actually doing under the hood?
Exactly.
The Savage actually says that it doesn't report gain reduction yet in Studio One, and that he sent the guy that made this plugin a request a year ago. So that I think what he means is like when you actually look at the channel in the Studio One mixer, it doesn't report the gain reduction like other
Correct.
plugins do.
And why
Correct,
do some plugins do and some don't? Do either one of you guys know that? Because I noticed with Waves it does, and Slate I believe it does, but like Universal Audio it doesn't.
Yeah, well, that's because Universal Audio is a DSP based, and there's some code missing in that in order to enable to reflect that on a Studio One channel.
So it's all done by the plugin manufacturer has to have things coded a certain way for that to happen.
That is correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
That is correct.
Excellent.
So again, with the Mark II, you have compress knob, makeup knob, and then this ratio selector, and then you have variable attack and release, which is nice. Same little panel at the bottom. That appears on all 3 models. This sounds really nice and warm. I use this a lot on drums in particular. And then you have the Mark III, which is much more of a more contemporary style, maybe 80s, 90s style compressor. At least this is what I'm just going on information that Tony, the guy that's made these, has told me. Because we've been emailing back and forth I just wanted to get as much information on what this is all about as I could. So again, you have the density button, the I stage, but then you have a high ratio button. So you can it's either fixed or this high ratio. I don't know what the high ratio is, but certainly on listening, it certainly feels to me like it's 12-1 when you push this button in.
Okay.
Again, variable attack and release. And then there's this punch slider from 0 to 3. And I think, certainly to my ears anyway, this adds a little bit of length to the attack time somehow and allows more transients through. So you get a much punchier, more hard-hitting sound. Again, this is really good on drums, but it's also very, very good on bass. I use this if I'm recording like a funk line on my fretless bass. This is my go-to compressor, and then I can play about with this punch button until I'm happy with the sound I'm getting.
How is it on CPU?
Very, very light. Very, very light on CPU. Hardly touches it.
Okay, so you think it would make a good channel strip plugin, like to be able to put it across like multiple channels?
I think you probably could. I mean,
Good.
I think that's something that can be tested, and you can see how many instances your system is able to give you of it. But my experience with this is it's actually pretty light. I mean, I have an i5 machine, 8 gigs of RAM, so I don't have a particularly amazingly fast and powerful computer.
Yeah, we have some
and
machines.
Yeah, exactly. So I can have this across a good number of channels before, this performance meter is starting to go up to like 30-40%.
Gotcha.
So it works really well. I've got a little New Orleans funk groove set up here, and we can just play about with the dials on this and kind of see what we like about the sound. So if I go back to the Mark I, you can hear, and then you can we could maybe discuss what we think about the differences between the 3 models.
Certainly. I think that's a great idea. And also, too, maybe one point in the chat, Johnny, afterwards, if you can maybe put the link to where people can get a hold of this if they want to go check it out or demo it, that might be good as well.
You can't put links. You'd have to put it in the description.
Oh, I can put it in the description afterwards. So it'll be in the archive. The video will be up on YouTube later tonight for people to watch later, and I'll make sure I do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can quickly show you the website. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
There it is.
Even better.
So it's klanghelm.com, and then you go to the products page here, and you go down to the MJUC variable tube compressor, and this is the baby here. 24 euros. You can buy it with PayPal, and it downloads in a few seconds. I mean, I have ridiculously slow internet here, so
right.
And it only took like 30 seconds, and it was there.
Nice.
Perfect. Excellent.
I love the GUI. I love the way it looks. It almost it makes you feel like you're using a hardware compressor.
It really does. It really does. And it was just like I've for those of you that don't know, I've been on a 15-year third-party plugin fast. It was originally only meant to be like 1 year where I would mix for a year with only native plugins. And I just didn't stop
Right.
until
Well,
last year when I got this compressor.
I have
Uh,
always been using native plugins, and it's just like in the last few months, thanks to Mr. Vignola.
I'll take the blame for that. You're welcome,
Yeah.
everybody. You're welcome.
Exactly. Exactly. My wallet hates you immensely, but that's okay.
Hey, believe me, your wallet doesn't hate you half as much as my wallet hates me. You have no clue. So,
Exactly.
well, put it this way, my wife hates my wallet. So...
Actually, isn't it your wife's wallet? But maybe that's another story.
Nice card, but don't tell her.
You too, huh?
Yeah, it's in my wallet as well.
Exactly. See, in your wallet.
Yeah, I have to keep tabs on her spending.
cool. So let's hear it. So you got a loop there. It sounds like, right? It looks like, and yeah, this is great. I can't wait to hear this thing. I've never heard of this compressor before, so I'm interested.
All right, well, let's take a listen to a few bars of this really nice New Orleans funk groove played by session legend Matt Chamberlain. So let's take a listen. So running this through the Mark I right now, and this is what it sounds without.
Oh, wow. You can actually hear the difference even though it's in mono.
Yep. And then there's this timing thing here, which is your attack time. So I can play about with this. So I'll start it down at 1. And then move it up.
Oh, nice.
And back. I have it on the hi-fi setting just now, so I can roll it back, gradually darker. Now roll it back the other way. Now I've got some drive on this if I roll it clean.
I think I just wrote a whole song to that drum beat now.
So there's definitely a lot of coloration happening there, which is really nice. It seems like on that lower setting there, you get a lot more compression. So it's a slow. It goes from is that an attack? You said the timing, so it's probably
Yes,
going
yeah.
from slow to fast. One being the slowest attack.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, one being the fastest attack, right? Because it's getting the most compression on the first setting. Is that
Yeah.
what we're seeing? Yeah.
Now, I even heard volume increase when he brought up that attack.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
going to happen because if it's on the fastest attack, means it cuts off the transient. You know, it's
Right.
percussion, so it's gonna soften it as you roll the attack back and slow it down. The transient's gonna pop through more, and you're gonna get a higher perceived volume without even touching the makeup gain.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's really good. That sounds great. Now, how does that compare to the Mark? What's it, Mark MK2, the Mark II?
Yeah, I'll come on to the Mark II in just a minute. There's a couple of things I didn't allude to, which I probably should have.
Okay.
You can resize the plugin. At the moment, I have it set to 100%, but you can change that to 50.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, you can Oh man.
Oh, why are we looking at it at 50%? Blow it up there. That looks nice. Now we're
That is so
talking.
cool. Now, see, why can't the Personas plugins do that, man?
FabFilter does that too, and it's great.
Oh, that is so cool to be able to do that, and it
Yeah.
looks the same. It doesn't look like it's extra scrunched. It's just that
No,
everything's smaller.
the resolution looks good. They did a nice job.
Oh yeah. Oh, I like that. You could put that on a monitor all by itself
That's
and
it.
feel really cool.
We're buying it just
Exactly.
for that. I'm buying it just for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. The other
No,
thing you
go
have
ahead.
here is AGC, which is auto gain compensation. Now, this is not like auto gain that you have on the Personas compressor, which to me, the auto gain on the compressor doesn't work phenomenally well for me. I just think that it just makes it louder rather than actually balancing the input and output signal. Whereas on this, it really does just balance it out. You can just go crazy with it, and the auto gain compensation actually really nicely balances out the input and output, which is really cool.
That's good.
And then next to it, you have this high quality option. I'll toggle this, and you can hear the difference. This drum beat is going to be in everybody's head for the rest of the month.
Awesome, Drumbeat. I want you to send it to me. I want to write something to it.
Yeah, sure. So this is without the HQ. And on.
I didn't hear much difference.
And off. Right, at this end, certainly the hi-hats cut through a bit more with the HQ on to my ears.
Yeah. Let us know what you're hearing on your end, because sometimes with internet, things get a little delayed or little artifacts and stuff. And compression is probably the most difficult to hear to begin with. Forget about streaming it from Scotland all the way over to the end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Johnny's just a hop, skipping a plane ride.
Right. So people can, if the sound isn't perfect on any of these plugins, guys, you can always go out to the manufacturer's website. You can probably demo them and check them out for yourself. This just kind of gives you an overview.
Well, there is a free version of this that basically amalgamates the Mark I and the Mark II a little bit. So it takes elements of those two and combines them together. And it's that one basically looks like. In fact, I can show you. Let me just close that out, because I actually did get the demo version. This one you cannot resize.
Oh.
But this is just like an absolute doddle to use. Mm-hmm. Compress, make up, and then you've got.
That's just basic.
Fast or slow attack.
Nice.
Auto. That's it. I don't even know. No, there's no presets for it, but it's just dead easy to get into. Just set it and forget it. That one.
It's great.
Let's go back to this one. Come on, open up. Thank you. And the cool thing is, when you close it with the size set at 150, the next time you open it, it just opens back at 150. It doesn't go back to its default of 100%, which is very cool. This does have a whole bunch of presets. Not there. Over here. So you've got presets for drums, bass, guitars.
Did you find the presets somewhat usable on some level? Because that varies so much from manufacturer to manufacturer. Some of them are great, and others of them are just not even usable.
Yeah, the drums ones are pretty good. I'll tell you the vocal ones. I didn't like this present and distorted at all. It just didn't sound very. It just sounded too aggressive.
Right.
But lead vocals to the front is very, very good.
Excellent.
Very
Excellent.
very easy. Just pop it on, and it does exactly what it says. Lead vocals to the front. It just brings it forward. So,
right.
It's a very useful preset. Okay, Mark II. Mark II is a slightly different color, which is nice. And again, compress, make up knob. you got the little ratio slider thing here. Again, I can just run this and I can toggle this, and you can hear the difference with the different ratio settings.
So
That's got a nice look to it.
so the other settings, Johnny, between the two, they stay the same. So like it looks like the compress and the makeup gain stayed the same to the Mark One, or does it go
Yeah,
back?
they do.
They do. Also, you can then A/B quickly between with the same
Yes.
settings. Okay, cool. That's really cool.
They are slightly. If I play the track on this and then flick over whilst it's still playing, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And Mark 2. So I had to balance it slightly because I found that this one with the same settings was actually a little quieter. So I had to adjust the makeup gain to bounce between the two a little bit. Okay, so let's play this and play around with these ratio settings. So it's on 2:1, 4:1. I'll even slam it over to limiting. And again, I can adjust all of these, which is quite nice. Check out this density button.
Yeah.
And off. And back on. That's just really, really nice. I have no idea what this I stage does, but check it out. So that's the Mark II, and again, but on this occasion, you've got much more control over your over your attack and release.
Cool.
Again, this is really cool for parallel compression, and it sounds great driven, as we showed on the Mark One.
Pardon me for 1 minute, guys. I'll be right back.
Sure. How about the Mark III? How does that compare in sound?
Okay, let's flip over. In fact, let me start with playing the track with the Mark II, and then I'll flip over.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I'll go for the density button again. I stage. And then you've got this high ratio button. Check out the punch slider as well. I've got this set on 1. If I turn it down to 0, and I'll crank it up. Oh, come on.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, what I hear here too is it adds a little bit of color and tone, but it's not it's not overdone. I mean, you could drive it harder, but you're getting some pretty good signal and some compression happening there, and it doesn't sound like it's really way too hyped. It sounds, it just adds a little bit of something. It's not way over the top.
Oh, you can really slam this compressor hard, and it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like the signal is being over compressed.
Right.
You don't get that that sense of claustrophobia from the compression at all. It just adds something really, really nice to the tone.
Right.
Yeah, so you can really, really crank this and compress really hard and just get nice tone, nice coloration, a little bit of helpful distortion, and it just doesn't sound like it's being sat on by an elephant or anything.
Yeah, and usually too, what I've noticed, having lots of experience with third-party plugins, what I find, and I don't see it with this, and it's a good thing, is that a lot of times the real inexpensive, kind of these small little companies that make real inexpensive plugins like this, usually, especially with compressors, does exactly what you just said. Everything sounds very squished and overhyped. It doesn't sound natural, and it's almost like they intentionally make it so the average person can hear this audible difference so much that they know that the compressor is doing something. Whereas on more high-end plugins, and this is a general statement, I realize, but typically with more higher-end plugins, the bigger companies that we all talk about, those are usually a little bit more realistic. They're a little more subtle, a little more transparent, and you got a lot more room to go from nothing to full on. There's a lot more of a sweep. But this one, for a small, you're getting 3 compressors for what? $20, did you say, or something like that?
Yeah, 24 euros, $15.
That's $15. That's great. And it's simple, and it's effective, and it doesn't kill, at least on this loop, it doesn't completely destroy your signal.
I've been using this over the last year as my only compressor for my session work as a bass player.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sending tracks off with this printed onto the track, and everybody's saying how great it sounds.
So you use this on the master bus primarily right now? You're running your whole mix through it on the master out? That's kind of what you're doing?
No, I'm using this on the channel, and I basically bounce it to the channel, and then I bounce it to the audio file which I send off. So.
Oh, I see. On your bass. Okay, so like you're playing a bass, it's on your insert on your bass.
Yeah.
And then you print it. Oh, okay, cool. That's great. That's awesome. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm gonna now that we've got the fat channel, which we've looked at in a lot of detail on the last live stream we did, and I've done a video on it. I'm gonna use the fat channel exclusively for a little while as well, and I'm gonna compare and contrast the Klanghelm with the fat channel.
That's great. I think that's a great compressor. That's really cool. Well, man, that was great. Thanks. If anyone has any questions, like what we'll do is each one of us looks like, we're pretty much like each one of us will do maybe like 30 minutes on our end, and then we'll do a 30-minute Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, I will shrink Johnny's screen and we'll reset things here. Johnny Guibe's back. So Johnny, you want me to go next, you said?
Actually, I'm fine with going next. I didn't think I'd have a song pulled up in time.
Okay, well let me go back, and then you go up and do your full screen, and then when you do full screen, when you do share screen full screen, I'll do full screen, and then everybody will be able to see.
Okay, I'm gonna close
supposedly
this.
Perfectly.
Somebody else will have to watch the chat. So let's see here. Call. Here we go. Share screen, and I'm going to share this one. Let me know when you see it.
Okay, you're full screen on my end, and looking at my dashboard, it looks just like it did for Johnny Scotland, so it should be good. YouTube will have a slight delay. It should switch any second.
Excellent. And I see it on the YouTube broadcast. Looks perfect.
Okay, excellent. Okay, all right, Johnny, take it away.
Thank you. So first I want to thank everybody for coming and participating in all this. The chat was active while Johnny was going through his thing. There were a couple of things that came up during the chat that I'll go into here in a second, as far as the plugin reduction being shown in the channels with third-party plugins. But the plugin that I am actually really going for, and I have to admit, it's the reason I bought the Slate plugins, because it was this one here, the virtual tape machine. To me, analog is important, and I have my old was it Panasonic? I always forget which one it is. I have my old reel to reel that I used to do mix downs to, that I actually bounce mixes to and then back. And I've never been convinced myself that a plugin could actually give me that kind of texture and everything like that. Of course, when you actually physically bounce it to tape and bounce it back, you're going to have to fight more of the actual tape hiss that's coming through. And that was the only thing that I hated about bouncing out and then bouncing back. Well, that problem has now been solved with a plugin, which I can't believe. This is the Steven Slate virtual tape machine. And of course, the highlight for me is actually watching the wheels go around and around.
Yeah, who cares what it sounds like? It just looks cool.
Yeah, right, exactly. But in all seriousness, it really, if I put this on another screen, and there was something that Johnny brought up a while back in a previous broadcast, as far as when to use a plugin like this, and to insert it after the mix is done will only have a small effect on your mix. You'll be able to hear changes and stuff, but the real place to put this is to put it on your main outs of your final mix. I put it on the inserts because I put a limiter that actually stops any clips on the post. But you put this on before you even begin the mix. Believe it or not, your mixes will turn out completely different if you mix with it as opposed to putting it on after the fact. I mean, that's a huge thing that everybody should know about this plugin in particular. But anyway, so for this, in this example that I'm using here, I'm using a song that I actually mixed without it, so that people could hear the difference. And again, I don't know the broadcast quality coming through on everybody's different devices. You guys may not hear anything major. They do have a demo mode, I believe, and I definitely would advise everybody to try it. I am actually doing the Steven Slate Everything Bundle for the $14 a month, and it is definitely well worth it, in my opinion. I know not everybody has that kind of money a month to put out, but it's definitely a better alternative than trying to buy things outright. All right, so here's the plugin right here, and I've got this song. It's a very, very digital song. Everything was pretty much electronics except for my signature acoustic guitar sounds. So I thought that this was a good one to actually test. But let me go through some of the settings here. So you have your input and your output options right here, and you can actually see as you increase the input, it auto reduces the output so that you hear the color that's being put onto it, not any kind of a volume increase, which I thought was fantastic to be able to do. The only part that I wish is that I could turn that off, but you can't. You can't disconnect the two knobs.
Yes, you can.
As far as like you can.
Yes,
How?
right above your right above the output. You see right to the left of the output. The output,
Right.
the name output, excuse me, right above on the output dial. See that little to your right, the word output right above the black knob. Right to
Yeah.
your left, there's a little link. Click that, and that separates the two.
Like I said, I've only been using this for a little while. So, David, you're a genius. Thank you for that. Oh, and it looks. Oh no. Okay, yeah. So so when you actually, I thought maybe if you unlink them, it would actually relink them in their respective positions, but no, it snaps them back to. Oh no. No. Okay, yeah, it snaps them back to their doppelganger appearances, as it were, just opposites. So okay, so that's actually good to know. But when they're linked, I find that the sound, it's really a good way to hear the sound and how it's colored. Okay, so that's the input and the output part. And this really goes back to my old school cassette tape deck recording mixdown days, a bias control. In the old days, I used to have to open up my stereo cassette deck mixdown unit and adjust a little screwdriver-based bias control, so that when I mix down and everything, if I use Dolby C to really make it quiet, but I used to have to crank the bias up a little bit to keep the highs. This is nice because you can do that right here on the plugin. Now, the thing to remember is that with this particular plugin, there are no presets. I don't know why there aren't. At least there aren't on mine. All of the other plugins have presets, but this one doesn't. David, do you have presets on
No,
yours?
there's no
Okay.
presets on the tape machine.
On the tape. Okay, well, that makes sense then. Okay. So then you have a couple of options here. I'm going to play the song. You have the ability, I'm just going to keep this low right now so you can see it. You have the ability to go from 30 inches per second to 15 inches per second. And if you have the plugin installed on your system, it is a decent difference. You can actually hear the slower tape speed darken the mix a little bit, and the faster tape speed brighten it up a little bit. And that's because more surface for the recording, the more true the capture onto the tape, and so on and so forth. So you're going to get a better resolution. The faster the tape speed, the better. I actually find that if I add a little bit of high end to my mix and then change it to the 16 IPS, I get a very nice, dark yet clean tone, and I get a really good analog feel out of it without the noise that some of these other analog simulators do. They just add like noise to it. This really feels like an actual tape background, a real good tape noise floor to me when you actually have it on the 16 IPS. And then of course you can change the size of your tape. And Dave, at any point, I'm still learning this. If I say something that is incorrect, correct me, okay?
Yeah, no, certainly you're doing great.
Okay, cool. So this gives you the ability to mix down basically to 2-inch tape or to 1/2-inch tape. Is that a reasonable assessment?
Yeah. So the 16 track mode is it's really two tape machines in one. The 16 track mode is like the multi-track 16 track tape machine. That's a different model. The 2-track is actually a mastering machine that they actually modeled. So
okay,
it is two different emulations, two different plugins in one.
Got it. I find that if I'm adding this to a bus, like let's say I've got a drum bus and I've got a bass bus, then a bass bus. Then I have a guitar bus and a vocal bus. If I'm going to add this to those buses, then I will actually keep it in this mode, in the 16 track mode. If I'm going to put it on the main outs, almost like a mix down kind of a deal, I will actually put it on the 2-track. I find I like the texture of the overall mix even a little bit better. The only thing that I'm not familiar with, Dave, maybe you might know this, is what this tape type is exactly. I don't know if it's a brand of tape.
Yeah, it is. I believe the FG456 is a Memorex brand, if I remember right. In the FG9, I don't think it's Memorex. I don't remember the name, but it is two different tape brands that just have a slightly different tonal characteristic. It's subtle.
The other one is BASF.
That's
BASF.
right. That's right.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes total sense.
That's right.
Okay, so I prefer, for the way that I mix and the textures and the settings that I use, I always keep it up here at this setting. I feel that this kind of darkens it a little bit more than I like. And again, you guys aren't going to really hear that over YouTube. So definitely I would recommend getting the demo version if you can. All right, so now with this particular song, I am actually going to increase the input. I'm going to drive this thing a little bit, okay? And the thing to remember, too, is the input at which you're putting your signal into it will definitely change the sound. And I'm going to leave these two linked. And Dave, again, thank you very much for letting me know that these chains were here. I didn't see those. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to play this song, and I want you guys to hear what happens gradually. As I increase this and as we drive the tape unit, you're going to hear a little bit of maybe undesirable distortion as I get up. And I want to see if everybody hears it. Okay, you ready?
We're ready.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to go at that level. And I'm going to increase the input. See, we're pegging here.
Yeah.
Told me to make it free. Never look for all that's precious. Okay, now what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to change to the bias high. You're going to hear a little bit of clarity. See if it'll do it. There we go. We believe in the sadness. Got to know that there's never the madness. Even though I can believe in some. So now Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the tape speed, and hopefully you guys can hear it. You're going to hear a little bit of brightness actually set in. There it goes, see? And I'm going to slow it down again. Once again, I'm inside out. And the thing to really listen to is the cymbals. So like the hi-hat and the crashes, when you actually jack up that tape speed, you hear that clarity come out. But you keep that underlying tone of actually driving this. I haven't really played around with overdriving this at all. Or using these two separately, but you actually heard it kind of got muddied and stuff as I turned it up. And you got to watch the meters on this. Definitely, you only want it barely touching some of the red area to really get a good saturation without too much color. And then you can actually go and you can save the presets, however you want to save them, and then build up your own preset rack. So, there's not really much to show on this other than these settings that I have. Everything is automatable in Studio One. You can see that if I adjust my input gain, it shows up here. You can see that if I separate them with the chain link and I operate the output, you can automate that also. Even the switches are automatable. So you can do everything. So you can actually change your settings as you're mixing. I've actually seen some people do that to where they want this beautifully nice and clear sound as the mix begins, and then they go ahead and they switch on either the bypass. I don't think the bypass will work. Oh, that's settings. I think bypass. Yep. You can automate bypass too. And so you can bring this thing in or out at any time during a mix. And I just really feel that I do not need my my mixdown deck anymore to get that analog sound. And I'm going to tell you guys something. Everybody knows how but how anti third-party plugin I've been. I've always felt that you can get that same sound with the native plugins in Studio One if you really work at it. Well, I ate a little bit of crow on that because I haven't been able to come close to what this thing does with a couple of switches.
Yeah. There's there's a difference between what you're describing is what I think you've always said, as I have and as Johnny has said as well, is that buying these plugins because you think it's a silver bullet that's going to fix your poor mixing skills,
correct,
is not right. But when you get to a level where you know what you're doing, and now you're looking to throw a little extra salt in the soup, so to speak, that's what a plugin like this will do for you.
Right. And yeah, that's exactly. And I think that the three of us have always been that way. If you think you're going to buy a plugin that's going to fix your mixes, you are sadly mistaken. No. You need to be able to get to that point within the plugins and everything that you're using initially. You need to be able to understand what your plugins are doing and try to get your mix. When you can't get, if everybody tells you, boy, that's almost there, then you start you start thinking, okay, then maybe there's a plugin out there that's got a preset or has a control that I don't have. And you would use this to improve your mixes. You can't use this to make your mixes great. Your mixes already need to be great. This is just like David said. This is just that little bit of extra salt on your soup to make it palatable. And that is the one thing that I've learned through all this. I've been probably more anti-third-party plugin than anybody. Only because I just feel that the money doesn't need to be wasted with if you've got decent native plugins, which I've always thought Presonus has. But I got to admit, I have not been able to come close to something like this. This doesn't necessarily improve my mix. But what it does is it gives me the ability to put that final touch on it. And like Johnny's plugin, his compressor plugin, that's another one too. That's probably got some algorithms that none of the Presonus plugins have. So these aren't to replace your plugins. These are to better your selection and better your power. So this one is going to end up being real short, Dave. That's pretty much all I can really say about this. I just think that even the default setting, if you drag this in just directly onto your outputs, the default setting, you're going to notice a difference.
Yeah, just run your signal through it. You have a settings button in the top left-hand corner. If you click on that, there's also over in the left-hand side of the screen where it says noise reduction and wow and flutter. The noise reduction is whenever it defaults where you're going to, if you were to take this tape machine and put it across all of your tracks, which is the way I use it, which we'll talk about another time, you're going to get that noise floor hiss. Now, some people like that because it sounds like the old vinyl records, and some people don't like that because they don't want the hiss. So you can use that noise reduction to get rid of the hiss. And the same thing with the wow and flutter. You can take out that noise that you were saying if you wanted to. So that's what those controls are for.
And you can't put this on a single track. It's got to be on a bus, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it can be on single tracks. It could be on singles track. Yep, and you would, the way it's designed, the 16 track mode, or the 16 track what do they call it? The 16 track model. That's intended to go on all your tracks, because it's like a multi-track tape machine where every single track would run through it. So you can absolutely put it there.
Absolutely right.
And there's no stereo mono. It just knows. So when you put it on individual tracks, you'd want to put it on the 16 track mode.
Correct.
And on the master out, like you were saying, you were right. You want it on the 2-track, the half-inch.
Right. Exactly. So, okay. So that's good. So if I do this, let me demo this real quick. I'm just on. Let's see this. On link. That's too much. Oh, I like being able to do these separately, boy. All right, so I've got it on the 16 track. I'm going to do the bias a little bit lower. You can hear the difference right away. I don't know if you guys can, but I can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go to the slower speed. There you go. See, that's kind of cool. See, that's like a true analog deck. If you go to the slower speed, you can't drive it as fast.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, that's just listen to the cymbals. For those of you that are maybe just joining in, I just want you to listen to the tape speed. It takes a couple seconds when I hit the switch, count to 3, and then you'll actually start to hear the highs slowly come in. Now, do you hear that increase? There we go. I like that. So let's see how this sounds in the mix now. I don't have anything on the outputs now. Okay, I'm going to put another one on the inserts now. I'm going to make sure that we're in 2-track. I'm going to raise the bias. I'm going to leave the tape speed at 30. A little dark. There's never the madness, even though I can believe in something upside down, you're waiting for something. Nah, normal. The bias needs to be at normal. Okay, so there you go. I think that was a pretty decent example of using it on a track, which is cool, David. I didn't know we could do that. And of course, with Studio One 3.5. If I was to, let me close this. Of course, I've got to do a tout here for Studio One 3.5, right?
Well, we're all using it, so we may as well.
Right, exactly. So if I take the virtual tape machine, I go on my basses and I go on my vocal track and I go on here and so on and so forth. I'm just using the settings that I used from the first one. When you copy it over from a channel to another channel, it'll take all of the settings with that. Keep an eye on the CPU. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. I didn't even see it move.
Yeah, it's pretty low intense CPU, the Slate stuff in general. Yeah, generally it is. He's done a good job. He's done a good job with that. The first revision of that, when that first came out, was a much higher CPU tax, and they redesigned it, and it's much, much better over the last couple of years.
Right. So there you go, guys. There's proof that you can really stack these things really nicely in Studio One, and the sound is incredible. I gotta say, if you're getting your mixes and your volume levels where you want them, but you're just not getting that final sound, this is my recommendation. And then, of course, you move this off to another screen all by itself, and you watch the wheels move as you mix, and it makes you feel really
makes
good.
it makes you feel good about yourself. The other thing you can do, the last thing you can do, which people don't realize, is over towards the left where it says ungrouped. If you click on that box, what you can do is you can set these up in groups. So while you would do that, let's say you were making a point about maybe on your drums, you want to run it at 30 inches per second because you want a more open feel. But let's say on your acoustic guitars, maybe you wanted to run it on 15 IPS per second. Well, you can group them. So all your drums are on group 1, your guitars are on group 2, and you can have different settings on the tape machine if you wanted to. And then you can bypass the whole group by turning the toggle switch off. So if you wanted to hear the accumulative effect of a tape machine across, say, 8 tracks, and they were all on group 1, when you hit the bypass toggle, it's going to turn them all off on all 8, anything that's grouped.
So does that go along with the settings? If I had 8 of them grouped for drums and I adjusted one, it would adjust all of them?
Yes, I believe so. I don't use it that way, so you may want to check that because I don't use it that way.
I crashed my Studio One.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't you guys. I was changing a setting in the background. Oops. All right, but that's okay. My demo is pretty much done.
Okay, that's cool.
I definitely recommend that to anybody, and that is my plug-in review for the virtual tape machine from Steven Slate.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much. And let me see. I just brought up my screen here, and I will click over to this camera. So we're down here. We're down like that. Is that right? Yeah, that should be good. Okay, cool. So I'm not sure what we got showing over here. We'll go this way. That's good.
I have not been watching the.
I've been watching it, and I think Johnny has as well.
Okay. Everybody heard the audio just fine, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So hopefully it looked good. Okay, that's cool. Well, thanks so much. That's an awesome plugin. I love the Slate tape machine. I've been using that one for years. So what I wanted to show, I was torn between 2 plugins, and the one I was going to show was the new Slate stuff that I just did a YouTube video on. So I'm not going to show because I did a YouTube video on it. But what I want to show this time around, this is a channel strip by Waves. This is part of the Abbey Road collection, and this is called the Red 17. Now, the Red 17, along with the Red, the hell is it? The Red 32, I think it is, and the TG 12345 are the 3 kind of console channel strips that made Abbey Road famous back in the late 60s and the 70s. The Beatles and Pink Floyd and, small bands like that not many people have heard of, have recorded through those consoles. And the Red console was a console that was made by the engineers at Abbey Road way back in I want to say the mid 60s. I don't have the exact timeline on it. And what this plugin is kind of used for is one of those situations where you stick them across all of your tracks as like the first plugin in the chain. And by doing that, you kind of emulate or, kind of reproduce what would have happened if you recorded in Abbey Road in a real studio with a real mixing console. You would have all the people in the live room playing, and they would all be going into a snake, and that microphone snake would all be patched into a console. In this case, the Red 17. So every instrument would have this character of this console on it. Now, what I did here for this demo to keep it simple is I just put it on a drum bus just to keep it simple so you can hear it. But typically, I would put this across all the tracks. So what I did here, let me close this for a second, is we just have some drums playing here. And I don't have them on any of the drums. As you can see, all the drums are in brown. There's no plugins. There's no processing at all. These are just kind of through the faders up. Nothing, not a full mix. This is a raw recording. And it's usually the best way I feel to hear what a channel strip can do before everything is all dressed up and processed. It's a little more obvious with this. The only thing I did on the drum bus here is because it wasn't processed, I put a Pro EQ on it and just took some of the mid-range out that had a lot of woofiness in it because I didn't EQ any of the tracks. So I just wanted to clean it up a little bit so it wasn't so mid-heavy. And then here, I'll take this Slate. This was the other plugin I was going to show, and I'll close this down because we're only going to stick to one. So I'm going to take this off. So here is the Red 17. So if I play back this little drum loopity thing, let me get rid of the acoustic guitar. We'll just hear the drums because I put it on the acoustic guitar, I think, as well. Okay. Okay, so this plugin's laid out pretty simply. So the thing about these kinds of channel strips that are modeled from the 60s is that the consoles are very simple. Unlike like the SSLs and the Neves and the other channel strips that you've seen or have seen me use where there's a gazillion buttons on them, there's gates and expanders and EQs and compressors. Back in those days when these kinds of consoles didn't have that, there's not even a compressor on this. There's just a tone high, here's the high control, which means treble, it's a shelf, and a tone low, for bass, right? Now this is the stereo version of it. When you buy this plugin, you'll get the stereo and the mono version if you want to stretch them all across your tracks, just so you know that. Underneath here, you have what's called the bass lift, which in the middle position, like I have it here, is bypassed. And you have a way you can kind of roll off some of the bass or increase some of the low end. Now, this was, according to their literature, the reason why the bass lift was put on the hardware was because when you use large condenser microphones in a live room and certain kind of miking kind of techniques and patterns, you would tend to have some frequency cancellations and lose some of the bass as part of that. And so they added this bass lift to kind of get some of that bass back. So that's kind of what it is. And we could play with it, but I typically leave it in the default position. Underneath it, you just have a gain and how much you want to push the console, the signal in. And they modeled 2 channels on the hardware unit. This is channel 1 with the toggle switch, or channel 2. This is a very, very slight sound difference. You wouldn't even hear it over YouTube. Over in the top right, we have the way we can monitor it, stereo, mono, or sidechain. We have a drive here, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just oversaturating the circuit. Anything past 12 o'clock, typically you'll get into clipping. On something like a drum bus could be helpful if you want to get a little bit of crispiness or hair on the snare drum, or maybe on a bass bus if you want to really kind of distort the bass in a way. The drive is really effective. And then you have this analog knob, which again, much like the Slate tape machine, just kind of models the hum and the hiss and the racket that goes on when you would run signal through an analog console or through any kind of piece of hardware. And that's what that does. It's kind of subtle on a single track, but when you put these on many tracks across your mix, it becomes really obvious. Like when there's quiet passages or pauses at the beginning and the end of the song, you can actually hear the noise floor, which some people like and some people don't like. And then down
How's
here,
the CPU on it?
not bad at all. You can put, I have it's a little unfair because I have a real high end kind of machine. But I can tell you, I could put 50 or 60 of these on a mix, and it doesn't even hit 20% on my machine.
Wow.
And then here's the output to kind of make up for the how much you want to push in. You want to kind of level match the plugin. So
Johnny and I are crying over here with the CPU usage.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so if we play this back,
Sad.
and I could just. You let me know if it's loud enough. It's loud enough in my cans, but just let me know. So here's the tone. And what you can tell is when you go from, low to all the way high, it's very musical. You don't have normally when you take, especially like a stock plugin of any kind, an EQ, you boost up the real top end, it gets very shrilly. There's not a very, on this kind of a plugin, there's a wide range of usable tone, so you don't have to worry about having it really sound bad. And then the low, same thing. I'll get rid of the bass here. All the way up. And now this bass lift, you can hear it in the kick drum. And that's a pad. That's a bass lift. And that's off. So again, the bass lift, when you put it to the lift, I don't know if I mentioned, so it has to do with the fact that sometimes when you're doing different types of miking kind of techniques with large diaphragm condenser microphones, you'll tend to lose some bass. And they built this back in to put that back in. But again, I usually leave it at bypass. So now if we wanted to kind of push the console a little bit with the gain, and you can offset that with the output. And then you can use that in correlation with the drive. So you can hear, obviously, too much. Here's our analog. So you can hear the hiss if you listen, right? So it reduces it a little. So now if I bypass it, oh, gotta compensate the volume here.
That's got a nice sound.
Certainly has.
Bypassed. Now what you're hearing in volume increase is the fact that I've turned up the tone all the way. You can see I got a lot of low and a lot of high ends. So what's nice about these analog emulations, which is a little bit of a different thought process than a stock plugin, or any, when you're dealing with analog channel strips in particular, a lot of them, with the exception of maybe the Neve stuff, you can really push them. You can really, you don't be afraid to jack the knobs all the way up. It gets more musical. That's not typical of plugins, usually, but in this case it is. So you can really push the lows and the highs, and it sounds very musical. The only thing you got to be careful with is the drive.
Yeah.
You can hear how nice it opens up the hi-hats, the ride cymbal. And again, this is just on a bus. They're not on any channels at all. If you really want to get crazy and push it, you can crank up the gain, the output gain.
Wow.
Right? So again,
cool.
I mean, it just adds a ton of character. So this, if you're looking for, and the reason why I can say this because this is fairly new to me. I've only had this plugin maybe a couple of weeks. I bought it as part of the Waves big Memorial Day sale. This I paid $25 for. And so I use lots of channel strips. I'm a big channel strip user, and we'll look at those in future episodes. I'll bring you out more channel strips. And the thing that I love about channel strips is they all have their different character. So if you're doing a mix that you want to have that kind of old, reminiscent of the old 60s or late 60s, early 70s recording that would have been done in like Abbey Road, this has a much different kind of a tone than something like an SSL or even like a Neve.
It's definitely a flavored sound. It's not transparent.
Not at all. It's no way. It's not transparent at all. It's very colored, but very different. So what I like about channel strips in general is I have, tons of channel strips by different manufacturers. So if I have a certain type of a track that I say, hey, this kind of track, it needs it's more modern indie rock. Well, this would not be the console that I would probably reach for. I'd probably reach for a Neve or for an SSL. But if it was more laid back, maybe more Beatle-esque or something Fleetwood Mac-esque, I might reach for this because it's got a lot of color and it just sounds good on that kind of music. But there's no rules. You could put it on anything, obviously. But that's just on a drum bus. I think I might have even put it on because it's such a simple plug-in. I think I put it on bass too. We can kind of, did I put it on bass? No, but I can. I could just drop this on the bass bus as well if you want to hear it on bass.
Definitely.
Johnny's a bass player. So again,
right.
let's go back to Unity on the settings here. So what I like about it on bass is it really brings out the fingers.
Yeah, you get a little bit more attack.
Yeah, and you could drive it. Get that clipping going on. That's before. I'll shut off the drums there. That's with. You know, you can even push the lows really heavy on this, and it doesn't get muddy.
No, but it gets super thick and powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
And this with the drive all the way down. So you can really hear where the bass starts to clip. Like if somebody went direct into the console, wasn't using an amp and plugged directly in, this is kind of what you would get.
Yeah.
Right? And now when you blend it with the drums, now if I shut off those inserts on both those tracks, here's what those two tracks sound like with no processing. So that's the, it's a simple one, but that's the Abbey Road's Red 17. Now, when you buy this again, you not only get the Red 17, but you also get, there's another, what the heck is the other one? It's the Red, I want to say it's the 3053. Let me just look. I want to tell you guys the right information. So it comes with two plugins. It's the Red 17, oh, and the Red 3751, which is just another version. It's a later version. I think the Red 17 was first, and then the Red 3751, and the amplifiers inside and some of the electronic circuitry is different. But you can see it's, you know, it's laid out a little differently, where the tone controls are on the bottom and the gains are in the middle, but the bass lift is in the same spot, and it's got all the same kind of things there, you know. But it's the same you know, same plugin. Or same when you buy one, you get them both. That's what I'm trying to say. So you're not buying two separate ones. You're getting both of these as part of the collection.
That's awesome.
And you have the Red 37, or you can go over to the Red 51. So I guess you can say you actually have three consoles. You have the Red 17, the Red 37, and the Red 51, which again are all just the next evolution of those consoles, you know, where there were improvements in different hardware used. So they sound a little different from each other. So you have three different flavors of ice cream, if you will, when you buy one plugin. And that's really that's really it for my end of things. Let me go back and let's switch back to get the three amigos on the screen together if we can, and we can take some Q&A. I don't know what's going on in the chat, but we can. Let me try to get us all up here. Let's see. Will this go the way it's supposed to? Hey, how about that? Look at that. It's almost like we know. It's almost like we know what we're doing. Almost.
Hey, don't be accusing people of things.
Yeah, right. We almost kind of know what we're doing. Oh, you go this way with Johnny Scotland, and then Johnny Guy. We can move him a little this way because he's moved in his chair. Okay, there we go. All right. So what's going on in the chat? I hope everyone found this kind of somewhat helpful. I mean, again, this is the first time we're doing this. If you guys have any suggestions, we'll certainly take note of it for the next time that we get together. I don't know how many people are here. I see 31, but it's usually more than that, right? So I'm not sure how many people are still watching us.
Almost 34.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. At one point, we got up to almost 40. We got up to 37.
Nice. That was fun. That was good. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. We got Steven saying three super plugins. Yeah, I would agree. They're all, you know, excellent. All sound a little different. All have their uses. Woodby says, thank you, Dave. No, thank you for joining. Let's see. What else we got going on? Smoke says he's listening at work. Great. Don't get in trouble at work.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. That's all I need to do is get a letter from his boss.
Yeah,
saying
right.
That the reason he was a slacker, you know.
That said, I'm listening at work.
Yeah. Well, me too. Right. This is work, right?
We need to fire ourselves, Dave.
Yeah, that's right.
We
Steven,
need to have a talk about Johnny.
Steven says he thinks I think I just grew up with those sounds, so I love them. Yep. If you're a product of the 50s, 60s, or 70s, and those are the records you grew up on, these are what those records try to sound like, and that is the reason why they're so popular. That's why these plugins are so popular.
Well, I think they've come a long way
They
with
have.
algorithms and being able to put them, into your music and making them realistic. I remember some of the early ones, they were just terrible. All it was is just white noise that they would add and
Right.
like cue the white noise to kind of make you feel like you had an analog feel. Or then the ever popular record scratch plugin, which I wanted to strangle people for after fighting my entire young life trying to get rid of the pops and crackles in my records. Some moron puts them back in. It's just like,
well, you know what it is? I think too, back when they first came out, the technology just wasn't there to
Sure.
do, and the computing power wasn't there. Even if you could have modeled the hardware to its nth degree, if the computing power, if you put a plug-in on and the computer just comes to a screeching halt, well, what good is it?
Well, and then even just the people that are writing these programs, just the knowledge. Some of these guys are, some of these programmers, they get with the guys that use this stuff, and then they say, is this the right sound? Is that the right sound? But now they can do like the IR plugin in Studio One. You can actually take a virtual picture of a room and duplicate duplicate the reverb just by taking an audio file and inserting it into an IR maker, and then you can make a reverb that matches it.
Yeah,
where
that's
did
insane.
that technology come from?
That's insane. Now, the thing about these analog plugins that I'll warn everybody about, because I've used them for so many years, is that the tendencies to do, and I did this too, the tendencies to get these things, to slap them on everything and jack all the knobs up. And because they want that instant satisfaction of saying, oh my, it's got to sound different. Now, the thing about, you want to use these things sparingly. It's like, a pinch of salt. If you're going to put like the tape machine on every track, you don't want to, unless you're going for specific sounds, but in general terms, you don't want that needle pinning up against the red on every track. You sometimes I don't even adjust the inputs and outputs. Whatever the signal coming into the plugin is, if it's just kind of tapping the needle, that's all it really needs to do. So you want to do these things in sparingly across all of your tracks, because the accumulative effect of that is going to have a massive difference at the end of the mix. Now, if you were going to put this on like a single track, or maybe like what Johnny Scotland showed us with one on a bus with the compressor, you could push it a little harder because all the other tracks are unaffected, right? So so you can screw up a mix really bad, really quickly with analog plugins if you don't really understand not only how it works from an EQ, or in our case today, because we really all talked about compressors for the most part, if you don't, and that's why we always say, if you don't understand how to use a stock compressor and what compression really does and how to effectively use it, you can mangle a mix with an analog compressor.
And in which case, some of these plugins will actually hurt your mix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, but I think all of these you can go out and demo. There was lots of questions about the iLock, Johnny, while you were presenting. And yes, you do need an iLock for Steven Slate plugins. You just do. You can either buy it, from a music store or whatever, or you can buy it from Slate Digital themselves. I think, Johnny, you were saying that you were doing some research that if you did a certain package, you get it for free. I didn't know that. So what did you find when you were...
If you get the everything bundle and you don't have an iLock, they'll send you a free one.
Correct.
Oh, great. But you got to get the everything bundle, right?
There's also another piece of information everybody needs to know, and I got this question after I was talking about these. You need to make sure that you have an iLock 2. If you have the original iLock, none of this stuff will work, and you'll still have to buy one. I got mine with my Pro Tools Express thing that I got. I had a client that wouldn't work with me unless I used Pro Tools, so I got a Pro Tools Express, and it came with the interface that's kind of like it's its key, its dongle. But it came with an iLock to unlock Pro Tools itself and some of the plugins. So you just got to make sure you have an iLock 2.
Yeah, or an iLock 3. I think there's iLock 3 now.
There is. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the differences are. Probably capacity or speed or something. I only have iLock 2.
Probably. But so at least an iLock 2.
You need to have an iLock 2. That's absolutely correct. But then you can demo all the Steven Slate stuff as well. You can demo those things.
Now, can you demo those without an iLock?
No. I don't
So you got-
believe so. They might have changed things since I first signed up. When I first signed up, I demoed them originally, and you could not. Now, maybe now that's changed. I don't really know. That would be something for the website. I'm not really sure. Let's see who else we got in the Tim. Tim says Johnny and Johnny's, the two Johnnies, and Dave. Thanks for doing this, guys. No, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining. We're going to do this once a month if you guys like it. We're going to pick a different plugin, or every month, and kind of talk about things. Let's see. Smoke says thank you for supporting us. It's Sunday here in Japan. Oh, Smoke is from Japan.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, wow.
I gotta tell you, man, we are ever reaching.
It's unbelievable. We had someone last time from Russia, I think, when we did the interactive.
Two of them from Russia.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, I know. I was talking to a guy 2 nights ago. Again, he's a continuing client of mine. He's from Kenya, Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really kind of bizarre because every once in a while you can hear gunshots going off at the back. And this thing is, and I sit here and I get that chill. I'm like, no way, I could never, ever do it. And there's a couple of guys out there too trying to get plane fare together to get me out there to do one of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I'm busy that day. I don't think I could do that. I would be very nervous. I mean, it's a huge compliment for anybody to even consider paying for an airline ticket to get me somewhere.
No, we'll do it over the internet. We're not going to crazy places like that.
Exactly.
Isaac says, I'm going to do it like Chris Lord, yank all the way, no remorse. So he's talking about Chris Lord algae. Yes, Chris Lord algae. And remember that we were talking like you yank all the knobs. Now, Chris Lord algae, he's famous for that, but he also works on an SSL desk. And on an SSL, if you've ever worked on an SSL, you can do that. Now, if you tried to do that on a Neve, and you cranked all the knobs, at least on the 88 series, your ears would bleed and you'd probably hit the floor.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, Chris Lord algae is very aggressive like that. So, and again, it's a good lesson that he teaches. Don't be afraid to turn the knobs. And that's why when people ask us about settings, I never give settings, because the settings don't mean anything. The knob, you turn it till it sounds good. And so that's what he does.
The cool thing about Studio One is that if you wanted to, like, let's say you have somebody that you're teaching that actually has the Slate plugins. The cool thing with Studio One is you can actually go into the presets. You can actually save a preset, not a preset for the plugin itself, but a preset, the Studio One plugin window preset. You can actually save those and share those if you really wanted to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can do a video on that, or maybe I'll do it in my next broadcast tomorrow, and I'll show you guys how to actually take a third-party plugin or even a native plugin, save a preset, and where to go to find them so that you can share them.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that'd be great if you could show that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone's asking about, where did I skip? Oh yeah, Stephen wants to know what about VST instruments? That would make a good event. Yep, this will be open to VST instruments as well. Absolutely, we'll get to that. Doesn't have to be a compressor. It could be any kind of plugin really, or virtual instrument, kind of the same thing. Right. The Savage says, no doubt, not a fan of dongle. Appreciate those developers that allow iLock licenses through the iLock Manager software in lieu of the dongle. Yes, you need, and I don't know, and I didn't realize, because I use the iLock Manager software as well, but I still thought you had to have your dongle, because all my licenses are on the Manager. So does that mean I don't need to plug a dongle into my computer?
Yeah, you can actually.
That I didn't know.
You can actually transfer your licenses to the software part of it, and then remove the dongle. I haven't been brave enough to try that yet. But I am told that is what you can do. I cannot confirm or deny that yet, though.
Now, if you do that, you're reliant on the internet connect. Your internet connection goes down. Will your plugins not work?
That I don't know. I would think that, see, when you do that, you lose the ability to move your dongle from machine to machine so that you can have the plugins on all of your machines. So I think that once they're local, your plugins will still work, but they will only work for a limited amount of time, and then you have to log on at some point. Oh. There are some people that don't like to work while connected to the internet.
Yeah.
So there is a downtime a part of that too. I'm not really familiar with what it is, and I've only just now started and talking to people that are using the iLock. So once I get more information, I will definitely pass that along.
Yeah, Martin says here he's had nothing but trouble with iLock, and I've heard that, and me and Johnny Scotland have talked about that a bunch, and he's had problems with that, right, Johnny? I've never had.
As have I.
I've never had a problem with an iLock. Knock on wood, or knock on wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
knock on wood
Yeah.
on your forehead.
I've
When I had Pro Tools, I had lots of problems with it. Pro Tools just wouldn't boot, or it didn't see the iLock, and I couldn't do a project. It was a nightmare.
But but that could be a Pro Tools thing, which would not
That is
surprise me
true.
one bit. I mean, but what about plugins? Have you had issues with plugins as well?
This is my first deal with plugins on an iLock, so I will let you know.
What about you, Johnny? When you had problems with it, was it more DAW thing or plugin thing?
It was a bit of both, actually. I had a lot of issues with Keybase that frustrated the life out of me. I mean, that wasn't iLock. They have their own dongle system that dates back to the late 1980s.
That's true.
And I think it's even probably the same code as well. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, iLock for plugins in my 15 years ago days when I was using Waves and stuff like that. Yeah, I had trouble with iLock devices going.
Well, even back then, USB was new. 15
It was.
years ago, so
Yeah, so maybe iLock is better now. Again, I really don't know. I gotta believe, and again, I don't know, but a lot of these plugin manufacturers are moving to the iLock. If it was that poor performance, you would think they would find another platform, because nobody would buy their plugins. I got to think that would kill the manufacturers if this thing wasn't somewhat reliable.
Actually, what I hear is that most manufacturers are now moving away from the iLock, and they're going to the more local installs now, because they're finding that people more are happier with their licenses local, so that they don't have to rely on an internet connection to always keep them going. But again, like we said, the only limitation of that is the fact that you can't move them from machine to machine. Now, see, I can actually take my iLock now. I can plug it into my Mac. I can download everything to it and get it running. But I would have to have the iLock plugged in for those plugins to work.
Right. But that's it for mobile. It's for mobility, right? So if you're someone who goes from studio to studio or computer to computer, if those plugins are local and that's it, you're done. If the computer goes down, or if you decide you need to work on a different box for whatever reason. So I guess there's pros and cons. But I wouldn't tell anyone to not. I wouldn't say don't buy don't try plugins that you really think might really help your productions and your music and help and you would enjoy over the simple fact of an iLock. I think you got to give it a try, because I got to think that, I mean, again, I've been using them for years. I've never had an issue, and I got to think a lot of people probably haven't had issues either.
Well, I'm a first-time iLock user now in the last 10 years at least, and this is the first time I've used them for plugins, and so far my experience has been perfect. Especially with the Gobbler account, with the Steven Slate, the way Steven Slate has it set up, and being able to update, every time a new plugin is released. Like Dave, you and I were talking the other day, the new plugins that were released.
Yeah.
You go to your Gobbler account, you refresh the account, you download them. So we're actually using our iLocks even more than we have in the past to do all of this stuff. And so far they seem stable. So that maybe, like you said, those days of loopy iLocks is over, so it's.
You would hope so. And I think a lot of the plugin companies now are also moving to more subscription-based stuff. You see more and more companies doing that, and some people, just like the iLock, you have people on both sides of that fence. I was on the side of the fence for a long time that I hated that idea, because I'd always purchased all my plugins. But the more I think, Slate is the only one that I have the everything bundle. I don't do this with any other company. And I got to say, I think my tune is changing, because, I mean, here's a great example. They just released 3 new plugins.
Right.
You get them for free. Now, though, if those plugins were even $50 plugins, and if they were sold on their own, they're more than that. If they were $50 plugins, it's $150 worth of plugins. You just paid for a whole year subscription of your everything bundle.
Right. And you may come to a point in the future that you just don't need them anymore.
And you just cancel.
Yeah, and you still probably in a year you haven't spent as much on a monthly payment as you would buying some of these $300, $400, $500 plugins outright.
Well, yeah, and two, you also then don't have to decide, well, do I want to buy it? Do I want to try it? I don't know if I want to spend the money. You get it all. You don't have to use them all, but you get them all. So I wonder, if it depends, I guess, on the manufacturer, but I mean, in how good their plugins are, how good you feel they are. But I tend to think the everything bundles is a heck of a deal. I mean, I agree. I mean,
Totally.
for 14, and if you can't pay the 100, I think you could pay yearly, monthly, or quarterly. I think there's a few different payment options.
I do monthly.
Yearly, you'll save, I think, a month. But
Right.
even at full price, it's like what, $14 US?
Yeah, it's 14.60 something a month.
I mean,
No,
that's crazy. I mean, that's insane. Yeah. And you get all their plugins, and all the updates. Everything is for free, which is
Now,
good.
And you see on the business side of it, if you're like us, who I know you guys do this full time. I'm a part-time music guy. I have a regular job that I put in 7 nights a week with, and for me, since I do make a little bit of money doing the music stuff, if you guys are smart, those of you out there that are considering this, consider how much money you make from clients. Even if it's only maybe 50, 60 bucks a month, an investment like this into these plugins would be a good idea. If you're good at budgeting and you're good at keeping your money, your house money separate from your studio money, you can justify the cost of $14 a month if you know that you're going to be making at least 50 to 100 bucks a month recording people and doing mixes for people and stuff like that. So, for those home studio guys like myself who do this on a part-time basis, that's actually a really good option. And now you don't have to shell out 300 bucks for that one plugin that you want. Now you just shell out 14 bucks.
And you get all of the plugins, yeah.
And you get everything, yeah. So just some advice on how I look at it. I don't take any of this money for my studio out of my household income, my regular stuff. If I don't make the money, I don't buy anything for the studio. So that's maybe a little incentive for those of you that are just starting to now charge clients and things like that. An investment like this is perfect.
Yeah, and it will make your mixes better if you're a good mixer. It will enhance your mixes, as we said before, right, Johnny? It just will. I mean,
yeah.
I think we've demonstrated over the last couple of weeks, as we kind of did things with the Presona stuff and the third party, just comparing those kinds of plugins, regardless of who makes them. We all said, and everybody said, everyone preferred one over the other, but we all said, wow, it really did enhance what we were trying to do, regardless of what company it was. There was a noticeable positive difference in the sound.
Right. It was an enhancement. It wasn't just a change.
Right.
It was a change. It was an enhancement for the better, especially Johnny's plugin, which is just a really inexpensive $20 plugin. See, those are the manufacturers that you really want to try to get out there and find, because usually those things always stay local. You can always reinstall them on another machine or something like that. They always stay true to the machine that you do them on. And just like us home studio guys that are out there, supporting these little plug-in companies that are actually trying to make a big difference is also a good idea.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I agree. And Steven says he's tempted to buy the everything bundle with the iLok. Yeah, give it a try. I don't think you would be disappointed after you've seen a couple of these demos. How could you be disappointed?
I definitely recommend it, Steven. This is from a big naysayer of iLok and third-party plugins. I definitely recommend it if you can spare it. And if you don't like it, the cool thing about Studio One, let's say you decide not to pay for it anymore, and now all of your plugins shut off. The songs that you did in Studio One with these plugins, they will never not open.
Right.
And unlike Cubase, I don't know if you've actually had this happen in Cubase. If you lose a couple of plugins in Cubase, sometimes the songs go corrupt and they just won't open anymore.
That's right.
Yes.
The nice thing about Studio One is when you open them, yeah, you guys are smiling like you've seen that before. And the nice thing about Studio One is when there's a plugin that's not present, like let's say you use a lot of the Slate plugins and you send your song to somebody else who only has native stuff. The worst that's going to happen is that the plugins will show up as red in Studio One, and you just replace them with native plugins and do your thing. That is really that is something that I was never able to do with either Pro Tools or Cubase. Is to, if you had to reinstall and you can't buy the plugins, you know that all of those songs are probably not going to open, and that's not the case with Studio One. So it's even in that point, it's still a good risk.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's see, the chat's going pretty strong here. Greg says, what do you think about Ozone plugins, and do you use them? I do not. I don't own any Ozone, but I've heard they're good. I just don't know. What about you guys?
No. I don't own, but I hear and see good things about them all the time. A good friend of mine, he swears by them, and he's always in my ear. He said, "I know you've broken your third party plug-in fast. You got to get some Ozone."
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't like when I used to use Ozone plugins with Cubase is their presets are super exaggerated. They
That's
are
very
they are absolutely useless. The presets, especially for like I'm trying to remember the two. They had one that was good for channel strip. I can't remember what it was called. And then they had the Ozone, the mastering plugin. I can't remember the name of that either. It was
Got
the
it.
green tinted plugin and stuff like that. Their presets were terrible. And see, for somebody that is beginning with plugins, especially something like Ozone, if the presets are terrible, you're never going to learn anything about the plugin if you don't have a decent preset that you can use so that you can kind of get it. Anybody new buying an Ozone plugin, at least from my experience, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put that preset and you're going to go, whoa, that's, and then you're not going to know what to back off on to get it to work. So at that point, where are you? So if you're a seasoned plugin user and you can figure out the controls, then I definitely don't recommend Ozone for any beginner. I definitely don't.
Yeah.
So
I don't know anything about them. I know of them. I just have never used them. Martin says, for me, if I'm going to do monthly payments, I'd rather focus on reference monitors, and I need a fader port 8. Well, there you go. So yes, you probably need a decent set of monitors before you need a plugin. That's probably true. The fader port, well, that's up to your workflow, and you're right. You may, it's whatever you need. Woodby says iZotope makes great plugins. Yep. Again, I'm sure they make fantastic plugins. I just don't have any experience with them.
Alloy was the other one. iZotope makes the Ozone plugin. iZotope Alloy was the kind of reduced version of the Ozone. It was more intended for individual tracks rather than just the mastering out like Ozone was meant for. And I had Alloy for a while in my Cubase days, and they weren't nearly as bad. The presets weren't nearly as bad as Ozone. So maybe Alloy would be the way to go for your first iZotope plugin.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I had that one as well in my Cubase.
Woodby says that PreSonus is a very special group of people. I would agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Steven says, I forgot my wife could hear Johnny Gibe say on my TV to buy the everything bundle.
Oh.
Hey, that's awesome. Maybe she'll say yes now, or maybe not.
You know what? I have to admit, I have had a particular client who will remain nameless that has been in these groups actually call me and ask me to talk to his wife.
Well, I've never had that.
Yes, he called me. He says, "Could you do me a favor?" And I was floored. I'm like, "You're kidding, right?" He goes, "No, actually, I'm serious."
Wow. That's funny.
I'm not going to say who it was. Because I don't know if they're I don't see them in the chat list, but I know that they've been at pretty much all of them.
The Savage says the Nectar 2, which I believe is an Ozone plugin, is a good strip made just for vocals. I've heard of that. I've never used it, but that's good. I've never used it.
That's got a killer harmonizer. Let me tell you something. I've seen the demos on that. It doesn't work for my voice because of all of my issues. I can't. If you've got a really good mid-range voice, like mine is so baritone when I sing, it's terrible. And I tried the Nectar demo and it was terrible. It was all over the place. But, if I was to get somebody in here to actually try, I brought my friend Neil in here, and he actually did a vocal track. He's got a voice, kind of middle of the road to Johnny's, and in between yours and mine and everything. And it worked fantastic. I definitely, if you've got a good mid-range voice, nice and powerful and smooth, the Nectar plugin for harmonies is fantastic.
That's good to know.
I don't have a mid-range voice.
Me neither. So that plugin won't work for me.
Yeah.
How about no voice? Would that make?
No. I mean, it'll work for your voice, Johnny. It'd be perfect.
Yeah,
I'm saying for low rumbly voices and unsteady voices like mine, it's like Melodyne for my voice. Usually doesn't work that well because it's just so inconsistent. And it rumbles so much, and Melodyne just goes, "What the hell is this noise?"
Yeah, you're referring to Register, aren't you?
Yes, I'm referring to Register. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that's the untrained part of my life right there.
I'm a higher Register. So.
Yeah,
exactly.
Martin says, that was my point, guys. If I don't hear something correctly because of my monitors suck, no plugin is going to help me with that. Not even the stock ones from Studio One. Well, that's a good point.
Correct.
So either
correct.
you get yourself a decent set of monitors or get yourself a really good set of headphones, which I have a brand new pair of headphones that I just got the other day that I'm trying out, which I've never heard a headphone that sounds, these are made by Focal. I have Focal monitors. I've been using them for years, and they claim that they sound as good as their monitors. I didn't believe it, and someone sent them to me for a demo, and they're pretty darn close. Best
That's nice.
mixing headphone I've ever heard thus far. So
Mixing
at a fraction of the price of the monitors, by the way.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Way
Oh,
cheaper.
and just really quick to recommend, he's looking for speakers, a very good middle of the road speaker. Yes, it's a Persona speaker, but I've got them actually on my console next to my Aris 5s. If you want something really good and true for your mixes and you're just starting out, I recommend the Personas Aris 4.5 monitors. They're back ported. You pull them away from the wall a little bit on your console, and they got very good low end. They're a very true translation speaker. They're not as good as the Aris 5s, but for the price, for under $200 for the pair, I definitely recommend them for anybody that's getting started. No, I don't make any money on them. And the only reason I'm really touting them now is because I just moved them to my main console. And there are times where I actually like them better than my Aris 5s because they're a little bit cleaner sounding.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just make sure before you buy monitors, get some acoustic treatment for your room, because you can put you can put a great monitor in your room, and if you don't hear it accurately, you may as well just use headphones.
That is correct.
So yeah, someone says they recommend the Mackie HR824s. Oh, HR824s. Yeah, I had those before my Focals. Those are a good monitor. Big speaker though, 8-inch speaker. So if you got a small room, be careful about that.
Yeah.
Even for my room, which is about, I don't know, 15, 18 feet deep by 22 feet wide, the 8s are too big. And I went to a 5.5-inch speaker with the Focals, and they're perfect for the room.
That's exactly what I did. Got to try the Aris 8s. My friend over there at Sam Ash here in Wheeling. And I ended up with the Aris 5s because I didn't really feel I could push the 8s because my room is only 10 by 10.
Right.
So, with a really small room like that, stick with a 5-inch speaker if you can. An 8 would be good, but you really won't get the use out of it. You won't really be able to let the cone swing enough to really give you the true sound.
You don't get enough air movement in the cone. You'd have to crank the volume so high you can't sit in front of them. So that's part of the problem. Woodby says, Dave, what headphones? These are the Focal Spirit Professionals. You can get them on sweetwater.com. They're expensive. I'm not going to lie to you. I was using KRK KNS 8400s for years. Those were $150 headphones, and those were good. They translated really well, but they cracked, and I needed to get a new pair. And at that time, someone said, you have Focal monitors. Have you ever tried the Focal headphones? And I says, no. And they said, try these, and sent them to me. And they're unbelievable. The Focal monitors I use are $1,300 a speaker. And these sounds 98% to what that speaker sounds like. I've sat here for hours taking them off and listening and putting them back. I can't believe it. So I said, wow, you can really mix on these. I mean, you could truly mix on these, and they sound just like the speakers in my room. But they're pricey. They're about $350. But if you don't have monitors, and you want to buy a high-end monitor but can't spend $4,000, this is a real good alternative to that. So it's all relative. You know what I mean? It's not a $200 set of PreSonus speakers, but it's not a $2,000 pair of Focal speakers either. So it all depends.
Yeah. In my other room, many years ago, I invested in a Blue Sky 2.1 system. That was about $1,000 back then. I took out a loan for those, and those are great. They sound a little bit better than the PreSonus as far as the overall sound, but my mixes come out more true on the PreSonus flatter speakers. So yeah, I would definitely get speakers before you get headphones
or plugins.
Or plugins. Yeah, yeah, or plugins.
Because every decision you make in a mix is what you hear, whether you're listening to your headphones or your speakers. So, and it almost, in some regard, it's true. If you get a set of speakers and keep them and learn them, and once you learn what they sound like in your environment, you can do the compensation piece of it. If something's a little off here and there, if your room is not perfectly tuned, to get a set of speakers, let them break in for about 90 days and really work them and learn them. And once you do that, you can mix a great mix on any set of speakers, really, or a set of headphones. I mean,
Yeah.
It's the way it is. So let's see. Greg says, is the Slate plugin bundle per month based or per year? Either, Greg. You can do per month like Johnny and Johnny do, or you can do per year like I do. I think if you do per year, you save a little bit of money, probably a month's worth of payments, $15 or something like that. But don't quote me on that. Go to their website.
And you can cancel it at any time, so it's not a contract kind of a thing.
Right.
If you use it for a couple of months and you find, you know what, I'm just not getting any advantage out of it, you just cancel it and you just remove the DLLs from the VST plugins folder, and then you're all back to normal.
Yep. So yeah, you could try it for a month, and if it's not for you, you cancel. You spent $15. Yep. If you didn't like it, then you sign up for a year. Let's see. I've got a lot of people still here floating around. Isaac saying, I used to have some Radio Shack speakers, and when
I still have my Radio Shack speakers.
And when they smell like smoke, that's when I know the bass is too loud. Good point. Mike says, yes, how about some advice on some room treatment? Well, you want to do, I have a couple of YouTube videos on my channel. I'm sure you guys probably do as well on basic room treatment. But basically, if you're in a room with no treatment, the most important areas for some kind of foam would be the wall in front of you, directly in front of you, and the first reflections on the side, which is, without getting too scientific, which is usually about just before your ears on your head, directly on the flat surfaces to catch the first reflections. And then the third most important thing, depending on how far the wall behind you is, you want to do some bass trapping or something, absorption on the back wall. Or if you have like a couch or furniture or a bookshelf or something, you just want to try to not have any flat parallel surfaces as much as possible.
Could I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, go ahead and I'll switch the camera shot there for you.
I just happen to have pulled up a couple of pictures that I did for people.
Okay.
And whilst Johnny is getting that set up, Richard Hargreave, who's just joined us, makes an excellent point. He says the title for the video says May 25th.
Yeah, it also says test webinar.
Oh, you know, that's a YouTube thing, because when you go to the event, and I have to switch that for the archive, when you create an event on YouTube and you try to broadcast and stream it, it always defaults back. So I'm sorry I didn't change the channel. Yeah.
I update mine before every show.
Yeah,
so
I screwed that up. Let me go to the full screen for you here, Johnny. Okay, no problem. now we got a Johnny full screen. Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry guys. I'll make sure. I was just trying to get this, all organized.
No problem. It's all a crapshoot. Trust me. Okay, so let me go through some of these real quick. These are some things that I actually did on my home studio trainer site. I've got to bring these back up to the home studio trainer site. If you've got a decently square or rectangular room, I came up with these little diagrams just really quickly so that you guys could kind of get an understanding. It's always a good idea. You have 2 points in your room that are the most important, and it's called the point of first reflection, and that has to do with the positioning of your speakers against the side treatment on your walls. It's not so much because of the corner treatment, which is secondary, but is necessary. These 2 positions are the most important, and these are called the point of first reflection when you're doing acoustical design. Acoustical, I don't even know if that's a word. Acoustic design. So you can actually do this and find the exact spot by using a mirror sitting in your headshot space right here, and then using a mirror and guiding it along this wall, and in your headshot space, looking at that mirror. And the minute that you actually can see the speaker in that mirror, that's where you hang your left side piece of sound treatment. And then you do the same thing with the right side. And then once you're done with that, if you have back ported speakers, it's important for you to get some sort of a treatment behind them, in between to where if your monitor is hanging on the wall or if it's just sitting on the desk, but just so you don't get what's called flutter echo. And just doing this simple thing, you can even make these out of towels and a homemade wood frame, just something to be able to absorb some of this here is a really good idea. And then of course, this here is the carpet. If you've got a wood floor, I would definitely advise a 10 or maybe an 8x8 carpet underneath your sitting position, about 6 feet away from each side, depending on how big your room is. I know that goes through a lot of specific measurements, but even in a bedroom, something like this would do you well for actually treating your room.
That's great.
That's great. That's good stuff, man.
Cool. And that's it. And then down here, I've just got your basic hookup for the best hookup, like if you're doing a home studio setup for laptops and if you're using a monitor station, not to plug your stuff into a mixer and then a mixer into a headphone amp, then a headphone amp into your speaker. It's always best to plug your interface directly into your computer and then your speakers directly into your interface for the best overall sound without any interruptions or points of failure.
Bobby Booth says that he would go for acoustic treatment, but he doesn't own the house to do treatment. Well, I have a solution for that because I don't own this house. This is a rented house that I'm in. And the way I've got around it is I've put my acoustic treatment onto big pieces of card, glued it to the card, and then pinned the card to the wall. So all I have is one tiny pinhole on the left and the right. And
at that point, it's like hanging a picture.
Yeah, basically. And you can get away with that because you can when we leave here, we just paint the walls and nobody knows.
Right, exactly. So that would be a good idea. You can get some really inexpensive. You know what you can even do? You can go to Walmart or something like that, and what you do is you get the corrugated bed foam. It's about $10 a bag, and you can get 4 good size panels for it, 2x4 foot panels. You cut them into the pieces and you glue them, like you said, to a piece of cardboard, tack that to the wall. And yeah, they're not charcoal color, but they will do just as well for getting some sort of treatment in your room to take care of flutter, echo, and reverb.
Well, that's great. That's another great, really good tip. So I think we're probably coming up on, what are we getting? We're probably getting close to 2 hours. We're going to try to keep this around a 2-hour segment. Down the road, if you guys want us to do more, we'll do more. We still have a ton of people here, it looks like.
I know. We had 37 people at the top count.
Nice. That's great. And then what we'll do is next month, and it'll be on the Facebook page, on all 3 of our Facebook pages, but it'll be on Home Recording Made Easy. I will put up by tomorrow when the next plug-in show will be, which will be, let's see, we got all of us on the camera here. Let me.
I stopped sharing my screen.
No, we should be good. And I just have to, hold on. It just takes a little bit of an adjustment here quickly, and then we all should be what we want it to be, or something similar to what we want it to be.
Well, I don't want me in 2 places.
Nope. So I got to get it over here like that. That's good. And I just have to move Johnny that way. Okay. Now we're good. We're close. We're close enough. Yeah. So if we get, it'll be, once a month we'll do this. And we'll keep going as long as you guys want to hang out with us and you guys like this, we'll keep going. And we'll keep asking, you guys can keep asking us questions. We'll make the show longer next time if you want. And that's really it. We're on 1 hour and 52 minutes and 9 seconds.
Yeah, we'll go 2 hours. I got some things to do tonight at about 6 o'clock. Then just so everybody knows, I am not going to do a broadcast tonight over at HST, but I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central Time for my broadcast.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Any other questions, guys? We have about 6 minutes or so, and then we're all going to kind of bug out of here. So if you have any questions for Johnny, or myself, now is the time to ask. You guys say you learned a lot. Thank you. No, thank you for watching. Kingston said, glad to see you all together. Yeah, we've been talking about doing something together for the longest time, and we just, we finally said we're just going to do it, and we're going to mess up our own schedules to make this happen.
And this was the perfect reason to get together like this so that everybody could get our own opinions on the plugins we find useful.
Yeah. And then as we move forward, we'll find that we'll end up using the same kinds of plugins differently from each other, which is great too. So it just shows different options on the way to do things.
Oh yeah, and we might be even doing it on. I know that we talked about using primarily third-party plugins, but we could do one on our favorite Personas plugins.
It was never really my intention to do only third-party plugins. I think we ought to do stock plugins as well, because I know there's certain stock plugins, Personas plugins that I don't ever use, that I've never used. It would be kind of cool to try those out and just see what they do and that kind of a thing.
And I also have a list of free plugins that I can throw into this mix. So maybe in the next time we do this, I'll have one free plugin to show everybody.
That's awesome. Richard says, Waves Virtual NX Room. Any ideas? I know of it. I think it's one of those kind of plugins you put on the master bus and it's like simulates the space and acoustic thing. I've tried a couple by other companies in the past, and I've never found them. I mean, I guess they're good if you just want to quickly check something,
Yeah.
but to actually
Biodynamics has one
yeah,
like
to
that.
run that
Has a
all the
boom-
time, I don't know.
Yeah, Biodynamics has one that you can choose a boombox, you can choose a car stereo.
Yeah.
It emulates the space. It was okay. I just didn't find it useful enough to use on a regular basis. On a regular basis, it was a freebie.
Yeah,
it was a free.
I use one by AudioFide called the Mix Checker, which I just did a review on maybe 4 weeks ago on the YouTube channel. That does I think 18 or something different space simulations,
Right.
and but that's good for that. I think that's a little different than what he's asking. That's good for just checking your mix. What would it sound like on an iPhone? Well,
Right,
I think
right.
I think the waves, the virtual room is actually making your kind of simulating that your room has been tuned, and that you would leave it on all the time, and you would mix through it.
The only problem with that is that when you're just listening to music casually, you don't have that. So you fool your ears for a little bit, and then you don't use it. If you could actually put it on your outputs for your speaker like all the time, before I had good speakers, I would actually put an EQ, this little Radio Shack, oddly enough, EQ in between my amp and my speakers, so that I could actually EQ the room the way I wanted. And then anytime I listen to music on it, it always sounded that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was, because I couldn't get the flat response speakers, I couldn't afford them, so I would actually like lower things on this little Radio Shack EQ to get that.
Right. Let's see. Kingston wants to know. Don't know if this is the topic, but I use Slate Digital because they hit the CPU easy, and PreSonus stock plugins mainly. Plus, what's in my X18 digital mixer like a Pultec and the Lexicon simulators. Okay. So you're using the stock plugins with the new what do they call it? The space station, creation station. I forget the hell the name. Space what? What
I have no idea.
Space state modeling.
Space state. I keep calling it the space station. I don't know why.
The space station.
It's like the space
You
station.
need a shuttle to get to it.
Right. So he's using that along with his stock plugins in the Slate because it's easy on the CPU. Yeah, I mean, the Slate stuff is, and certainly the PreSonus stuff is really easy on the CPU. And if you didn't, Kingston, see our broadcast, what was it, last week, where we did the comparison between the PreSonus, Pultec that you're asking about and the third-party stuff. Go watch that because it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And we used that Pultec, and it was nice. We liked it.
Yeah, we did.
Space Invaders.
Space Station Invaders.
Isaac says Space Invaders.
Okay, so we're getting up to about 2 hours now, guys. So I know we still got a ton of people here, and I know you guys will ask us questions all night, but we all have things we all have to run and do. But again, thanks so much for joining us, and Johnny, thank you so much for being co-hosts with me. This is fun, and we'll do it again next month for sure. Any parting words, Johnny Scotland?
Actually, Smoke had posted the same question a couple of times because I think we just kept on missing it.
What was it?
So I thought we could finish with that maybe.
Sure.
He says, is compression really needed? Brackets besides coloring, since there is clip gain in Studio One.
I see what. Yep. Oh yeah, Johnny, you answered it. Yeah, I have an answer for that too. But
as far as compression goes, it's funny because I don't use compression at all on my mix bus, on my outputs. I save the compression for the individual tracks to get the sound and the flavor that I want out of individual tracks. At the very most, on the master bus outputs, I put a limiter, and I keep it pretty much either at the default or enough to bring up the overall perceived volume of my mix up to close to 0 dB. I don't, for the way that I mix, I don't usually need a compressor on my final output. However, I will put a compressor, like say on a drum bus, like I've got 8 tracks going to a bus.
Right.
I'll put a compressor on that because it kind of glues all of the tracks together. I find that a compressor on the main outs, at least for the way that I mix, and just because my mixing style is very different from David and Johnny's, is that I do a lot of that before the master bus, so I usually don't need one on the master bus. But I'm interested in your opinions.
What about you, Johnny? How do you handle that? What are you saying with the clip gain? Or do you?
Yeah, I mix through a compressor. So I have a compressor on the mix bus right from the start, and so I mix through that. Yes, I use compression on. I do top down style mixing. So I start with the mix bus, and then
Work your way
my
back.
bus what my buses and then individual channels. So I'm using compression on my buses. I'm using compression on individual channels if they need it at all. Um, if individual channels need nothing, after I've done bus mixing, then I don't put it on. I don't put EQ on. I don't put compression on if it doesn't need it. But everything starts with the mix bus compressor, and I think for me that goes back to where I started, which was on analog consoles.
Yep.
So you start with the mix bus compressor because that's how the consoles are oriented. So
Right.
so that's where it goes for me.
I never had a console in my younger days that actually had compressors on it. I always had to use the inserts. I had one compressor and I had one EQ, and I used to have to pretty much nail my EQ and my compression to go to track because it was all I had. I couldn't put it on the outside bus.
Right. So yeah, my thing is and if I may have understood his question a little differently, which was if you have, let's say, a vocal track, because you have clip gaining, you can raise and lower the event. Do you really need a compressor? So
Gotcha.
there are lots
still
there.
would for tracks.
Yeah, there are lots of times where and I just did this on actually Johnny doesn't know this. I just mixed my Chanel, and on one of his horns, it's very dynamic because horns typically are, especially on the first note on the one. It's always the first note and the last note of the passage is always the loudest. I don't know what it is with horn players, but it is. It's the breath thing. So
yeah, I totally missed the clip gain question.
right.
Sorry
So what happens is you can put a compressor on that to compress that, and what you end up doing is you end up setting the compressor to capture that heavy transient, but then the rest of the passage of the note, the sustain, the compressor isn't really set right. So what I'll do is I'll go in to the event with a blade and I'll cut it and I'll lower those peaks and I'll because that's what you're asking is, I think you're asking about the conceptually you're correct. By cutting that up and lowering the clip gain, that is what a compressor is doing. Anyway, you're just doing it manually. But if the dynamic range is so big, but it's all over the place, a compressor won't effectively always capture that. Now some people will stack compressors and try it that way. And you can.
Or you can use a brick wall limiter.
Or you can use a brick wall limiter. A lot of times I'll go in and if there's only like 4 or 5 notes, like on this horn track, I just go in and lower them. And then I let the compressor work a little less hard. And now I'm using the compressor more for what I typically think about compression, which is more tone than compression. So the answer is you don't need it, but if you didn't do that and you did everything through clip gain, boy, it would take you an awfully long time. Right. And part of the problem is if you do it manually, the tendency is to try to make that performance very linear, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to get rid of all the dynamics. You want that.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But it's just how much, and it's all personal taste. So it's that's. But
So is it wrong to put a compressor after you've adjusted clip gain? No, it's not wrong, but it may not be necessary.
It may not be. Really depends on the track.
All your peaks, right?
It really depends on the track. On this particular track with the horn, I still had to compress it pretty heavily because because this the way a saxophone is, the first note is very spiky, but then it's a sustain thing and it trails off. So now I'm using the compressor to take that sustain and bring it up so I can hear the trail. So and this is where you get into how do you use compressors for more than just let's compress. How do you use them to shape the sound? And that's so that's a good question. I've never had anybody ask me that. That's a very good question. Yep. That's someone that's really paying attention. That's great. That's awesome. All right, guys, we're just over 2 hours. We're going to take off, even though there's 30. I have 29 on my screen. I don't know what you guys are seeing, but
32.
Awesome. So it's been pretty much 30 to 40 the whole time. Again, thanks so much. Again, we're going to do this again next month. Stay tuned to our Facebook pages. You'll see a post of the next show, and we'll have 3 new plugins.
Yep.
Okay, guys?
Yeah, looking forward.
Later, folks.
See you later. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining. Whoops. Are we